Nicole Dement, the executive director of SOLA. SOLA stands for Support of Old Lady Artists, and it was founded by Jenny Ruffner and Marge Levy. They are with us in spirit here tonight as we move forward with technology and artists with this great conversation, Art and AI with Peter Bittner. I want to start really quickly with a land acknowledgement. And as we gather in community tonight, we acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Squaxin, Nisqually, and Coast Salish peoples. And I'm joining from Duwamish land in Seattle, and I have great gratitude for the care that the Duwamish people have taken for this land and for this opportunity to join in community together due to that care. And I invite us all to honor the indigenous peoples of the land where you are. Thank you. So, we received on our survey some input regarding AI, and it was all over the place. I want to know what it is. I'm afraid of it. All of the different possibilities of what AI could mean for someone. And so I was lucky enough last year to participate in an AI for Creatives online workshop. That was last year, yeah. So much has happened since then. And Peter Bittner is joining us today. He was one of the two teachers, hi Peter, in that class. And he now he is the co-founder of this AI upgrade, and him and Chris Krug were the teachers that I worked with, and it was very interactive with a cohort of individuals from a diverse collection of individuals, actually. And it was really a comprehensive groundwork for generative AI and for professionals that helped me understand a little bit about what I could do with it. I will say that it was a lot of information, and I'm probably going to take it again. So. Because it's constantly changing. But Peter, thank you so much for being here. You know, your AI upgrade includes courses, consulting, and practical content to help people understand and use today's AI tools. And you've led programs at UC Berkeley's Advanced AI and Emerging Media, and then lectured for a while at the Graduate School of Journalism. That's also in Berkeley, is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So my background
Yeah.
originally is as a filmmaker in sort of the journalistic, nonfiction tradition and emerging media, sort of blended space. So my
Mm.
master's is in, new media journalism, but I've kind of wandered more into the AI education and consulting space in the last several years or so. And yeah, it was so fun to have you in the class. We do it quarterly. We have people from all different walks of life, visual artists, video design, all sorts of interesting backgrounds.
Really diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
video game designer. I want to say like some, marketers, folks
Hmm.
who come from, all different walks of life. It's
Yeah.
fun. Novelists. Yeah.
Well, I really, really appreciate you being here today. I know there's a lot of questions, and with that, both Peter and I are suffering from colds. So I have the benefit of Robin Arnott here to take over and sort of lead the conversation. But I am here and I'm watching and learning as well. So if you guys want to just take it over, let's get started. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. And it's so great to see some friendly faces here. And yeah, thanks for the wave. And yeah, so I'll just go ahead and let Peter get started about, let's just start with the basics. How about let's talk about AI in plain language? What is it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Artificial intelligence is sort of, a form of, technology that has been around for quite a while in many ways that we probably just didn't even ever realize we were using it, right? And it manifests in many different formats, right? And so, for example, Google Maps or many different types of, technologies for all sorts of Siri, what has really come out in the last few years that has been a step change and led to all of sort of the buzz is something called a large language model, which is basically if you think of like a compressed, distilled version of like all of the corpus of the internet's text, all of those, different message boards and any sort of websites or novels all vacuumed up and distilled into kind of a synthetic neural network. So modeled off of this type of structure that the human brain has in terms of having some. I should have a cool visual. I'm speaking to artists here. Unfortunately, I don't for this one yet on this slide. Because we're going to get into the tools in a second and actually see what this means in real life for us and how it might be useful in another minute or two. But these large language models include ChatGPT, right, which many of you may have heard of and used. Who has used ChatGPT or another AI model? I see Nicole, yeah, Wendy, Robin. Okay, great. I see some other hands up. So they're becoming really very popular, and many people are using them for all different types of medium, right? That's kind of the interesting thing. They are called multimodal models, which means you can sort of transform text to images, right? Voice to text, image to voice, all of these things potentially sort of multi-format wise. For artists in particular, and creatives can be really interesting and powerful. There's a lot of different ways that we can start to tinker with them, but it's also just really important to think and acknowledge that, these are really um, trained off of and all this data that has been sucked up, right? And appropriated in many cases, right? Some of the stickier questions ethically are, how should we use this technology intentionally here and with an ethical frame and mindset because many of our own websites and my articles that I've written as a journalist and many of my colleagues' books and photos have all been vacuumed up by Google, by ChatGPT's, OpenAI company, and turned into a product that they're selling now, right? And they're selling it back to me to use. And so, how do we feel about this, right? Is another thing we should also really figure out, what our sort of values are and stance on it and realizing that it's not going away. It's definitely here. There are so many exciting opportunities that come up. There are also, some ethical questions as well as some fears that are also very valid to hold, right, at the same time.
Great. Thank you. So, I mean, this is a little like ooh, my heart like beats a little bit because that's how fast is this coming towards us? And what does this mean for us as artists? And I want to come at this from a place of grounding, right? We want to be able to use this as a tool, but I also want to be very, like as you kind of alluded to, I want to make sure that we are very upfront about the ethics of this as well. So yeah, question one, like how fast is this? And then question two, what challenges and does this pose more specifically as artists? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but then how can we collaborate as artists too?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's happening really fast, right? And so 3 years ago or so, when I jumped from teaching at UC Berkeley to launching the AI upgrade with my business partner, ChatGPT had just come out for the first version, and it was very rudimentary, was not really connected to the live internet. It couldn't really do anything with imagery, right? It was pretty bad at maintaining a good consistent tone and was often afactual and we'd call it hallucinations, right? Were super common, which is where it
Hmm.
basically just makes up things. It could be a
Yeah.
visual artifact sometimes that's totally, fictionalized when you're asking for a representation of something factual or historical, right? Could be it's telling you something verbally that is a lie, and there's no really intention, or deception behind this, as far as we know. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But these things have generally been worked out. The accuracy, right, the sophistication, the ability to go back and forth and even generate video now, right, from simple text prompts, incredibly sophisticated and continuing to accelerate in the pace of their development. So these things are, yeah, really taking off and coming into all sorts of different creative fields. And it's, there's some, yeah, valid questions about, well, should it be taking over the creative work? Shouldn't that be our job? And isn't that what humans do? And that is all really valid. And I think there's a lot of ways to use AI and leverage it to accelerate and just experiment and embrace your own human creativity and do some of the drudgery that is not super exciting all the time to us as artists or professionals, including admin, right?
Yeah.
Finance or accounting, depending, right? Some of, the work of building a portfolio website, all those things that are not the art, right? They're not that process. And that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit in the demo in a minute or two and get into what that, can look and feel like to suddenly have a bit of, a personal assistant to be all those support systems for us.
Great. Thank you. I'm really excited for this demo coming up and seeing the actual practical application of this. And but I see there's some Glindy, you had a little some comments in the chat here. Did you want to quickly jump on or
Oh,
ask what you need to do?
no, I mean, I can wait till later in the program if
Okay,
that's,
sure.
I was just trying to get it in there so that I didn't forget it.
Awesome. Okay, we'll come back
Okay.
to it at the end. Thanks. Yeah, I know we just kind of
Right
dove
on.
straight into this, and it's very new and it's a lot of information all at once. So I wanted to take a pause before we get into the to demos and talking about this and see if anybody has a question getting caught up. And I guarantee you, for those of you who don't know, I taught as well, so I know when there's a whole bunch of people with a new subject that like if one person has a question, like there's at least a handful of others who also have that same question. So I would encourage you to go ahead and ask if you do have anything before we start moving on. All right. Well, I guess we're good. So let's just go into it. How can we use this tool? How can we you talked a little bit about creating something like admin work. So
It might
let's go
even be
ahead.
like an artist statement. We could start there for a gallery submission,
All right.
grant applications, right, where we could start thinking about how this might be helpful. And I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Give me a thumbs up if you can. I'm going to be picking on Nicole here as our demo. She has given permission, and I'm going to be re reimagining a bit of what a process could look like with her as the example and her beautiful and caustic art here. So this is an experiment I'm going to be running with ChatGPT. This is where I'll be spending our time in the demo today for the most part, which I like to think of as kind of a Swiss Army knife in many cases of these AI tools and products. You can do a little bit of everything, right? You can do some of this textual analysis and production, as well as image creation and other things here as well. So let's start here. And I've just put in a prompt. We can talk about prompting and what that is, but this is sort of like the new skill in many ways, right? That is required to sort of get something out of these systems, right? In this case, I am, and fact check me, Nicole, because this was also AI generated in part, right? I've looked through it. As far as I can tell, these look like they're your real pieces, right? I asked AI, could you put together an example? How are we doing here?
Yeah, there's actually, this is interesting that it's from AI because there are some pretty uncommon pieces here.
And so this would be another thing. If this was for a real sort of, example of an artist statement, like you might have a certain gallery in mind, right? You might have a certain collection in mind that you're curating, right? And so you might really want to be more, yeah, intentional in terms of what is the theme, what is the message, what is the vision, what are the exact collections. This is an example of just a very bare bones starting point. In many cases, and I'll let it run here. I've simply just asked for, and it'd be interesting what it thinks is the intersections between these four pieces it has selected, right? But
So to be clear real quick, Peter, this is so what you did right here is you typed in a prompt of like Nicole's work that you're just kind of like these are some things that I picked from her site for creating an artist statement, and you're putting this in to generate an artist statement. That's what's going on?
yeah, so
Okay. All right.
exactly. So I'm, yeah, using her homepage here on her portfolio website and had AI help me make, pull some info here and
Mhm.
create an artist statement that captures Nicole's voice and style, spiritual but grounded, not flowery or pretentious, right? And so this is sort of an example of a way that you can prompt. Prompting is sort of the what I'm doing here. I'm giving it an assignment. It's briefing, right? In many cases, and in a lot of ways, you want to spend some time on these. Imagine that you're giving the assignment to the world's best intern, right? In some cases, it's incredibly capable, but has very little grounding in the subject matter. It knows nothing really about Nicole per se by default, unless we really tell it some things to start with to ground it in a lot of ways. And so let's see how it does here. And we can run it by, Nicole here and see if it feels or sounds like something related to what you had put in, or if it doesn't pass the sniff test. And that's okay if it doesn't, that's totally fine. It may not at first, right? An iteration might be required. So my work is layered conversation between material and mystery. Using beeswax, pigment, resin, and found elements, I build surfaces that hold both presence and memory. I love that. I feel like you may have said that in our class when you're introducing yourself, right? Like, honestly, it feels to me like we're getting somewhere towards your work and your vibe here, right? And I like it. And again, this is something of a process that there's a bit of science behind, but a lot of it still is kind of artistry in the way you're prompting it to. So we could ask for some different alternate versions. We could ask for example. Let's take the URL of Nicole's portfolio site here, and we could say, please generate 3 to 4 ideas of other galleries to potentially submit this statement too. We might even use it as a bit of a tool to see where are they actually accepting some of these and have some openings that might be relevant. And so this is also a way to do some live web search too and integrate into kind of a custom result that is you can see it's giving us an update on its sort of current process. It's going through all these different URLs and websites and looking at opportunities for where Nicole might, and a lot of these, right? Northwest Art Alliance, artcall.org, Seattle Art Museum. It's interesting what it's pulling from there. But it's interesting. Got one strong Seattle fit and one broader Santa Fe route. That's interesting. Checking for two more that are actually accepting submissions and have a real artist entry pathway now. And so this is, again, using as context what we've provided here is our current portfolio website. It's giving some recommendations for things that may or may not be worth, pitching basically, that are possibly open for submissions now. And we always have to double check these results, right? But in this case, it's giving us the links to go and double check everything. Have you heard of any of these? Have you displayed your work
Yeah.
at some of these?
I have not displayed my work at these in particular, but I have heard of them. They're great galleries.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Some very
And
Yeah.
familiar ones. Yeah.
I can see your work fitting in some of these places. I don't know this Santa Fe Gallery Association, but
Yeah.
some of the ones locally I can see.
It's interesting, right? And again, it talks, in ways that sound very human. My instinct, right? My like, what do you mean your instinct? You're an AI model here. You're, kind of a stochastic parrot, right? In many cases is what sort of our current understanding, right, is sort of really sophisticated autocompletes in many ways, right? These models are, yeah, positioning themselves in many cases for human engagement and similar to, all sorts of, yeah, online platforms wanting to feel as human as possible to give us those endorphins and neurotransmitters for feedback. So we need to also use these, tools carefully and realize that, in some ways we are the product as well, especially if we're using a free version of these types of tools. I'm paying $20 a month or so for these in particular, but there'll be ads maybe very soon here in ChatGPT, right? If you're using it as a free user, you might get results that are possibly biased by what the commercial interests are behind these.
Mm,
And so it's something to be aware of, right?
yeah.
And always check, always take it with a grain of salt here. But these can be fantastic for things like grant writing, for applications and submissions to fellowships, things that might be relevant for residencies. It's a fun way, especially the more you give it in terms of your previous work as context, the better results you'll have, right? And experience you'll have with it. So, for example, if we uploaded a number of previous, you know, successful applications from Nicole's in the past for things like, yeah, some of these artist statements or fellowship applications, what have you, right? It will start to even sound more and more like, serving her specifically, right? Instead of a generic version of these bots, which it can
Mm.
start with, right? So the more we give it, the more we shall receive in sort of the right direction, right? But it's usually an iterative process. And a lot of times I like to get started with thinking like at the very beginning of a prompt, what am, what do I need to give it in terms of the relevant info about me? What am I asking it to do, right? Those two things even, right? What does it need to know about me? And what do I need to get out of it here? Because sometimes people use these, which is fine way to use them too, also. Like a normal Google search with 4 words and that's it. And they think all it can do is really surface some instant answers, but it can do a lot more if you think more critically about crafting some of those prompts and attaching more information to it, right? So that's something that I see a lot of students moving towards the trajectory of really feeding in more information, getting much better results, and having to kind of do less hand-to-hand combat with it to get it back into the direction you want. Um, I'm gonna pause for questions right here. Are these things that you guys have played around with, these types of use cases, web search or writing things like this? Yeah, Kalindi, yeah. Craig,
I
nice.
feel like this is helpful for me when I like have kind of the blank page syndrome where I'm like I just don't even know where to begin and then I just like start putting like a little like something in for like say for my artist statement and I'm like
Mhm.
okay this and this then I'm like it just may not be exactly what I want but it kind of gets me rolling to like actually start writing what I need to write to yeah add for
Mhm.
any submissions.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask it in this case for, an artist statement,
Yeah,
Santa
Tana
Fe Gallery.
for Santa Fe.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, what that might
Yeah.
look like, what it might pull from your work and emphasize, and and these are very short, textual materials that we're asking it to generate here. Um, and this is something that is easy to generally skim here, but they can also generate 40-page reports, right? They can generate, really sophisticated, lengthy materials. And they're able to do them at a level that is very impressive, right? In many cases. But unless you ask the questions in the right way and give it the right information, it might not yield things that are very impressive, right? And it might, at first pass, not be in the right work direction. Um, Interesting.
You
Return to
know,
themes of
these
transformation. Yeah,
aren't
how's
bad.
that feel?
They aren't bad, but I find that AI tends to just say the same thing over and over and over again in
Mm,
different words. And so
yep.
I use it a lot, having taken the class and understanding how to use it. Um, and I edit a lot, a lot, a lot,
Yeah.
a lot. um, and making sure that it is my voice.
Right.
It, even though, it's taken some of my voice from my website and the things that I've created there, but making sure that it's my voice. And, you know, I still feel like this is pretty general and making
Mm,
sure that it's edited. But
totally.
one thing I was thinking about with the specific um, prompt that you put into what galleries would be good, it came back with a bunch of very general galleries that are great. And
Mm,
one thing that is really helpful for artists is to talk with your friends. If your friend, I mean, you just don't want to, it's hard to find a gallery that you really want to work with outside of the area. But if you know someone at that gallery, then maybe there's a really targeted approach or finding
right.
out, I know this person in Santa Fe and where are they showing? Because we're a community of individuals
Yeah.
that network really well. Where are they showing? What other kinds of work show at this gallery? And then sort of jumping off from there, it is a very smart research tool that you can interact with. So I'm just throwing that out there because I know
Yep.
people are always looking for galleries and ways. And then there's other alternatives. And it really did come up with both some commercial galleries and some alternative spaces. So I thought that was really interesting. And you could target it to, I'm at the level of a emerging artist or I'm a professional artist, however you want to define
Yeah.
yourself, and then finding spaces that fit that, and you could have it target galleries or suggest alternative spaces. I mean, of course, we could get really creative with it, but we don't want to get
Mhm.
too much information, I guess.
Sure. And again, this is something of a query that I'm running that will take 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm using something called the deep research tool here, right? Which is something that you can toggle on in the bottom of the chat here, right? And so for a thought experiment, I said I'm at the level of an emerging artist. Please create a list of galleries, residencies, and fellowships that may be relevant to me, right? And so
Perfect.
this is something that might be a useful step. This is basically previewing to us here its next steps and its task list for how it is going to approach this. And it might go for 10 minutes, right? It might take 20. In some cases, it might come back with a 30-page report or list of these things in this case, just based on what it knows about Nicole from our chat here, right? And again, we could give it a lot more. We can always attach things. I want to just flag that. You can add photos and files. These AM models are really good at identifying imagery here as well and pulling themes from them. So if you wanted to, let's say you had a body of work here that you haven't really thought about for a while. It's been in the back. How might you describe it, position it, sort of identify the themes here? Does it map with your own vision, right? You could do that and also include that here. And we're gonna play with the visual stuff in a minute here. But yeah, I see Kalindi, you came off mute. Do you guys have some questions? I encourage, participation and question asking. It's starting on this list here now, but
I find that you've just given it, sort of contradictory information in your prompts, and it's going to probably have a rough time parsing out because she is so not an entry level artist or an emerging artist, and she's
sure,
got shows and museums and galleries all over the place.
of
So,
course.
so that kind of prompt can really rattle Chat GPT, and it might just come back to you in a half hour and say, you know what, I failed.
Yeah, I doubt
That's
it these
happened
days,
to me.
but it's certainly possible. And you're absolutely right in terms of, if we were running this for Nicole in real life, we probably would not ask it that. And it's funny because, yeah, in some cases it will push back and be like, well, Nicole is not
Yeah.
actually, and it'll probably have a preamble that's like, while she has, had an incredible body of work and showings here, 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 and have like an intro there, here's where she might have gotten started if she were beginning today, right? And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Kalinda. You definitely use these models a lot. I can tell, and they have their quirks too. And we also need to think about, are we asking them consistently, because they're very sort of consistency, reinforced like tools, and in a lot of ways, if we give them things that they don't know what to do with, it might give us some weird like hallucinations or funky results, right? That might be unexpected. You're right.
I'll just add one more comment, just in this kind of flow that you're in with what you're working on. I use
Sure.
the microphone and talk to her. I
Love
have it
that.
set up as a her. I talk
Nice.
to her
Yeah.
and explain where I feel like her reasoning is getting wrong. She's AI learning from my direct input. So the more I can converse with her and give her that information, the more it is more me
Yeah, I
and what
love
I'm
that.
trying
I
to
think
write.
that's absolutely right. Um, that's something that is really worth noting as
Because
well.
I'm poetic, right? I speak beautifully, but sometimes she fixes me up a little, you know?
Yeah,
So,
totally. And I
yeah.
love that. I think that's a great tip as well to oftentimes here's an additional prompt that you can see is recording now as I'm speaking here. Um, as an additional follow-up step, after you complete this deep research report, could you do a quick uh, list of prioritizing the top ones and create some timelines for me to actually highlight which are the ones initially that I should consider prioritizing and applying? And so this will just kind of, in this case, it's just dictating it indirectly, right? But there is also a mode to talk with it, and that might be also something you've played with, Clindy, I'm sure, right? That can be an interesting way. It can be a little freaky sometimes to have the AI in your ear too, but I do think you're onto something in that when I'm typing, I'm like really overthinking stuff. When I'm speaking, it's much more natural and intuitive, right? And it will encapsulate my actual personality and my tone of voice and things too. So I totally agree with you there. And I love that you've created, yeah, a version. There's also a memory layer as you speak with it more or type with it or work with it more. There is actual memory layer in ChatGPT and many of these other models that you can sort of cultivate or garden. My colleague Chris likes to call it gardening your memory and your sort of personal, it's actually called personalization settings here now. And this is something to think about too, which is very common in a lot of these models that people don't realize exist unless they go poking around looking for something else. And so we can set it to be quirky, nerdy, cynical, friendly, right? We can have it adopt some certain tones, yeah, over others. We can decide if we want it to be really emoji heavy. I hate emojis. I'm actually just going to set it to less right
I am
now.
with you with that. That's actually my biggest pet peeve with
Yes.
ChatGPT.
I'm gonna have it, yeah, I'm gonna have it tone down some of the enthusiasm and sycophancy, which is really annoying with some of these. I'm actually just updating a lot of these now. I don't use ChatGPT as much as I use Claude these days, which is a different thing that we can talk about, related to for a lot of reasons. I use Claude, which I find to be really similar in many ways, right? All these models work similarly to a degree here, but I can tell it about myself, right? It can also, yeah, really reference me. It's tough because I do so many different projects, and things like this that are one-offs. It can be really difficult sometimes for ChatGPT or even my real life wife to keep track of what the hell I'm up to. So it's sometimes not worth this. But you can manage your memory and you can see what it understands about you, right? And so it's interesting in this case, like I have a bunch of things in here that are totally different, that I haven't worked on for a while. It has some course promotion information. It has some things about business partners I have, right? And these are things that it basically pulled directly from different threads and chats in the past that I've had with it. That we can also say, you know what, this isn't really related to anything I'm working on now. Nope. I'm not doing that, and I can delete it. I can also search memories, which is interesting, different from searching chats, but that is another thing to think about. Um, you can
I think we have
also,
a
Peter,
few questions. Yeah.
yeah, of
I
course.
also want to just say, Peter, while you're in here, is there anything about security that we can touch on here? I see that security button. So I'm just wondering,
Totally.
is everything that we do on ChatGPT open to the public, or do you have to pay, or what is that like?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So generally, you do have to pay to have the ability to not have your models training not having your chats training the next versions of the models, right? So that's sort of, yeah, the privacy and safety side. We will definitely talk more a little bit about that. Security, I do recommend having like two-factor authentication, meaning you have like a phone or I have Authenticator app connected because I'm chatting and providing a lot more context, right? It has a lot more info about me that, if OpenAI gets nationalized or like
Yeah.
gets sold somewhere, right? Like we already had Meta, having this issue with Cambridge Analytica, all of the user data being sold to, uh, yeah, for various reasons that were never disclosed to users and for political purposes, right? Like these are things that we do have to be really careful about, right? And we need to think through critically, like, are we okay with, AI having all this stuff about us, even if we say no, don't use my info to train the next model? Will they really honor that? And, there's a lot of questions about, let's say I got subpoenaed, right? And they went and asked OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, for my chat history. Like, well, that actually they might be compelled to turn all that over, right? Just like my Google search. And if I'm in here doing all my personal finance stuff and I'm lying to the IRS, not saying I'm doing that, but let's say hypothetically, I could get in big trouble. So you got to be careful here with what you're putting in here, and how it might get out into the world if things um, you know, go in the direction of companies being irresponsible, governments forcing them, or legal reasons forcing them to compel to release information or sell it without your knowledge, right? These are really important more than ever, right? Especially as they're becoming more powerful, getting more and more of our personal data, right? Um, so yeah, I love that question. What other questions are there here? Well, this thing's still working, right? And it's
Wendy, I think
Yeah.
Wendy had a question.
Wendy.
Yeah, I think of ChatGPT as a super smart assistant, but
Mm-hmm.
there's something kind of seductive about wanting it to replace the hard work of being creative and writing.
Uh-huh.
And so you get these responses that all sound good, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like it flattens um, you know, your voice and it's all super artist statement-y and
Mm-hmm.
I don't love that. And so I
Yeah.
feel like it's good for kind of challenging, what else can you say or what else can you
Hmm.
consider, but I'm really kind of suspicious about replacing just using ChatGPT to be like quirky and poetic
It
and
will absolutely genericize
academic.
that.
It
Yeah.
just I don't believe what it comes up with as a person actually still.
Hmm.
And the other part is when you do spend the time and kind of you're at your edge of learning and you're figuring stuff out, it's so satisfying to actually like nail stuff and
Right.
write and make and kind of like consider. And so the quickness of ChatGPT seems like it gets rid of all that. And you're like, oh, that's good. That's good. That's better than, being insecure for 3 hours and trying to figure it out. But in the end,
Sure.
that final thing feels less
Right.
resonant, less authentic. It's not authentic in the way that really coming to something through a process is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm both intrigued by it and I'm also like, wow, it sounds like everybody else's words.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. A few things. First of all, you're absolutely right. And this is definitely a risk of, yeah, I like the flattening term that you had there. Some ways to kind of counteract that a little bit and get it to actually adopt sort of your tone and brand more. There's a few of them, right? And Nicole, in our class, we talked about this a little bit, but you can create your own sort of brand foundation docs, right? Your own I don't know if you guys have played around with that, but you could even have AI help you do that. For example, upload a bunch of different PDFs from previous artist statements, right? Ideally, the more you give it, the better you'll have in terms of some of the results. Let me show you some of mine actually, because this might be helpful. Because this is how I use it in reality. I don't start with a what's called like a blank chat like this, right? I typically um, make sure that it is grounded in some way and curated more. This is kind of my account for demos. When I actually use it, I have a different one, but let me show you. I'll go find it here. Some of my actual documents, but I've had it take some of my transcripts from teaching, for example, and throw a dozen or two of it. Actually, from the class with Nicole, I said, what are some of the themes of me, like that make me unique? Like, what are the quirks, right, that I have when I speak? What are the things that stand out as maybe rough edges that actually differentiate me from others, right, in the way that I communicate? And these are things that it then compiled into like a 15-page document, right? And I call it there's two. I have like a brand voicing guideline, which sounds very corporate, but it's fairly good at the surface level stuff. But then there's like a underlying philosophy that it's helped me teased out and values that I didn't even realize I had that have been really interesting to play with. So let me go see if I can find that. Ignore my calendar. It is a nightmare. But I'll go find that while I'm talking about it. And I think it's worldview doc is the one that I'm. Here's my worldview guide. I can even share it in the chat here. Um, you can use it, but it may make you sound like me. So there's that. It won't make you sound generic to the same degree, probably, as just using a blank chat. But I use this in tandem with a brand view guide, other representative documents, right, from the task that I'm working on. But this one was created here. I even have a custom GPT that I can share with you guys afterwards to help create your own ones, right? Where it will you can have a conversation with it in the style of Glindy, right? Chatting with it. And it can interview you, right? Or you can upload a bunch of documents or transcripts if you have them, and it will just spit out something like this with some core values. And this was an interesting task. Like I made this myself by starting with those transcripts, as I mentioned, but yeah, in some cases it's talking with new clients, it's talking with, you know, different students here for AI coaching sessions. And there's some things that are really interesting that it pulled out. Like, I'm a bad salesperson. No pressure sales, right? Like, that's interesting. That's probably something I should work on. But these are definitely interesting that it has pulled these out from all of my transcripts, and things that are definitely important to me in the way that I try to communicate across all of my, different selves in work. But it did a pretty decent job. It even said how you might want to use these guides, right? You could put it into a custom GPT. You could, help use it as a reference in many places, but I kept asking it. This is the result of one large thread with ChatGPT, like go a level deeper, go a level deeper in these transcripts. What is really towards the bottom here of what my values are that aren't really surfaced, but that are implicit, right? What are the things that really differentiate me? It's interesting that it's teasing out, yeah, my journalistic background, cohort focus, relationship, iterative design thing. These are absolutely true in the way that I try to bring my best self to our classes. But then it got really interesting. I was like, no, that is still too surface level. Like, go really deep. And I was like, okay, okay. Um, Knowledge is power, but only if it's shared. And so, point of learning is a liberation. And that was really interesting. I was like, huh, that actually is true. The human is the interface. That's an interesting, kind of trippy one, but it's also right in the fact that like all of the human experience is where the work happens, right? It is the thing. AI agents don't replace them. They are, intersecting with them. Agency over automation, right? These are some of the values that I bring up over and over again. Professionalism and respect. Anyway, these things like I try to really manifest daily, but like I'd never written them down anywhere, right? I kept asking it, really, what is like the deeper layer even beyond that. And it was like, okay, okay. they called it the philosophical operating system, which is kind of interesting. What really am I all about? Justice through tools, tech as a cultural language. Like it, this was interesting. I didn't give it anything besides my transcripts and a series of questions, pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. Um, and
Peter,
this is
this
hopefully,
is super cool. I want to get to a couple of more practical things
yes,
before
thank you. Sorry,
as we're
guys.
starting to
I'm
run out of
totally
time.
on a
I
rabbit hole
really love
here.
it. Like I would stay here all day checking this out. But I want to make sure we there's one thing that was really cool that we talked about when we were kind of meeting, which was web presence and portfolio. And I would love to see how people can use this um, to
Yeah,
work on their web
definitely.
presence.
Absolutely. For
Thank you.
reference, there's my worldview doc, and I'll share the GPT as well if you'd like to create your own
Thank
and
you.
experiment with something like that. But yeah, let's play around with some of the actual portfolio envisioning. Who has vibe coded? We're gonna vibe code for a quick minute using something called Lovable. Um,
So what are we using? What is this tool?
It is called Lovable. It actually integrates with ChatGPT. We could ask ChatGPT also
Okay.
to do this. I think Lovable is a little bit better under a free account. You can do exactly what I'm going to show you here. You might run out of credits to
So where do we
continue
find
to
Lovable?
tinker. So lovable.dev, I'll drop it in the chat here and can
Okay,
also
great.
send it.
Thank you.
Yeah, send it afterwards as well. But we could say simply, this is kind of the cool thing. Vibe coding is sort of the art of reimagining or re-envisioning things that weren't possible before because we always had to like run it through an official designer or software engineer or developer, and now we can just start somewhere and say, please help reimagine and re-envision. And similarly, the more we give it, the better it will do. Let's see if I can spell here. Um, with attachments, we can even put in screenshots directly, right? And so I'm giving it the URL of the original site here, but let's say do you have a lovely like brand palette in mind, Nicole? Is there someone, or it could be a different organization that has an amazing website, the colors that are really striking to you? Do you have anything from your work that we should use as inspiration? You know what? I think it'll pull these anyway, but I'm just gonna screenshot this.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a good idea. Yeah.
yeah, let's just start there, right? Start with the good stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
My
even just
keywords are
something,
minimal, subdued color, gallery.
yeah, I love that. I'm just gonna attach it as a file here. Yeah. Minimalistic, you were saying, or is that
Yep. Yep. Gallery style,
stick? Okay,
portfolio style,
there's the
subdued
portfolio.
colors.
Um, I'm just gonna start it because it's gonna take a few minutes. It's gonna build an
Yeah.
entire website here with just that prompt, right? And we can do a lot of iteration after this. Once it finishes, we could also give it an entire page or corpus of documents as a prompt and assignment, right? We could give it 50 pages of what we're looking for, right? And you may or may not, the funny thing is with these tools, you may or may not get exactly 50 times better results or not, right? You might get something worse. And so that's why they call it vibe coding. In many ways, it's like not an exact science either, which is kind of, I think, the fun part in it a little bit for me is like I never exactly know what I'm gonna get. Um, and it will go through and it's building out like everything that a website would normally have in terms of all of the different pages and code. And if, I give it further palette, let's say color scheme, it will do that, right? Questions
So
on this stuff? Who's played with this stuff?
when it builds this out, will it give us the code to just be able to like integrate into like a GoDaddy account that we have? Like how do we actually use this once it generates?
Yeah, so that's a beautiful part. So once it's done, if you have GoDaddy, for example, you can directly publish it to your GoDaddy. All you have to do is you don't have to like copy any C names or any of that crap that I still don't understand, even though I'm deep down this rabbit hole. But all you need to do is log into your GoDaddy account. It will link it to your Lovable account, and it
Oh
will
wow.
allow you to simply host it through there, right? And so it will
That's
deploy and sort of
amazing.
take over. Yeah, if you have an existing domain on there, it will just take it over. It might ask you for some extra steps in that process, but it will, yeah, be able to be a published real thing, like through two steps. And that's another sort of, I think, empowering thing and democratizing in that way, right?
Oh my
Uh,
God,
Oh,
my
well,
website is
I'm
the bane of my existence.
yes.
I hate it.
Well,
yeah,
I'm
let me
thinking
give you
about
guys
as
an
artists,
example of,
we're always uploading new works and everything to our sites. Like, can this be built so that like we could easily do that? Because that's always like a difficult thing for artists is like, oh gosh, like I have to update
yeah.
this my site again with my work. And so like when you prompt this, like are you able to kind of like tell it to make that work?
Yes, absolutely. So you would
Cool.
simply put that into your prompt, and guess what? They have voice mode here too. So we can dictate if that is better. And in many cases, it is, right? It takes out that
Yeah.
layer of sort of self-doubt or criticism or just like, you in some ways literally are able to speak into existence things this way, especially when it comes to the vibe coding stuff, which I find really cool. But yeah, we would simply put in the prompt like make it a, an interface for admin for me to directly upload my latest works and have them in the gallery on X page or whatever, right? And so
Uh-huh.
interesting what it's looking at now. We can also see its sort of steps here on the side. Here's a reimagined portfolio. It looks like it's kind of getting there. White cube gallery aesthetic, warm off-white tones, cormorant Garmin font. Interesting. Um,
Oh,
interesting.
look, there's Nicole's new site.
Wow. So yeah,
What do
that
you
took
think, Nicole?
like 5 minutes. Selected
Oh,
word.
that's interesting. It completely reinterpreted my artwork. That's not my artwork.
Again, we gave it virtually
So
no prompt, right? But
we told to re-envision, and so they're re-envisioning me altogether.
yeah,
Interesting.
is this not your artwork? Oh no. Oh,
No, it's not. I mean, it's
oh.
kind of, it's
Oh.
reinterpreting
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
Well,
what
that's
it
yeah.
something
did
to be
here,
careful about when we're prompting. We have to be skilled with like, okay, please use only the artworks from my site that already exist.
And you
yeah,
can upload
exactly.
images for it to use. You
Yeah.
You
can
can
upload your own
upload them
images.
Yeah.
directly in
Yeah,
the prompt, right?
yeah.
What I
Yeah.
probably should have done if this was a better demo, probably, is actually download all of them from your portfolio
Yeah.
and put them in the prompt here. We could also make it in the next step to do that instantly. Oh yeah, that's
I
so
mean, you can
funny.
see how it has interpreted it, but it
Yeah.
totally
Comparing
re-envisioned.
them, and this is like sort of it kind of genericized them in some ways, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
um,
Forget the normal
fascinating.
bodies I use. We're gonna use
Yeah.
this perfect
Oh, yeah,
AI
I know.
woman body.
So
Uh,
interesting. Um,
well,
so
that's
yeah,
Problem.
can it actually bridge this into like something I quickly want to touch on before because we're already at 6:25.
sure.
But like image generation. So this is like the elephant in the room with artists.
This is what
I
just
see some
happened too,
no's
right? It kind
like
of
in
inserted itself into
like
the
I'm like no no
conversation.
no no no. Like let's but I want to bring out the elephant in the room. This is like what artists are afraid of. This is what, can we just like chat about that for a second while we're kind of um shutting down since it's so annoyingly made
Totally.
these like women that Nicole would never paint.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's this, right, in many ways, like Lovable did the image generation, right, using it, who knows what model under the hood, kind of without consent as well, reinterpreted that, popped them in there. That's bizarre, right? And that's also a very strange experience to have to play with these. This is how they sort of default towards, and so in some ways representative here, but yeah, they definitely pull towards exactly what Nicole was saying, what we saw, right? Which is like very sort of classic commercialized tropes of what, everything is, right? From beauty standards, femininity, like in particular, yeah, marginalized groups and things like that. Of course, my wife is from Mongolia. We get like crazy things that are not at all related to Mongolian culture that are just sort of like again, generic, like flattened Asian tropes and stereotypes coming out when we play with this, unless we do it in a way that actually infuses some of her own work and language and visuals into it, and then it can become really interesting. But it is definitely requires some experimentation, and it will default to something that might be offensive. And I'm sorry if that happened to you, Nicole, on this. That was not my intent.
We have a question by Nove here.
Yeah, just a quick note as you were speaking about your wife. I catch that same issue when I'm pushing my prompts through and I want an
Mm,
image of a black man. He
yeah.
always comes out very angry, very aggressive, very upset. And I have to go in, tell it, hey, chill out. This is a kind, soft father, not an angry black man.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, these things, similar problem with Mongolian men, as well. Like, also historically, yeah, there in Mongolia, there's a lot of like these murals of violence too. It brings those in even if we're talking about something completely different. It's very not okay. And, it's weird. Is that your artwork, by the way, your profile there? It's beautiful.
Yeah, this is a piece of me and my youngest son right here.
That's
Oh.
amazing. Great to meet you. Thanks for, yeah, making your voice heard. It's great to have you here.
So,
Other questions?
Peter, we have 2 minutes left. Can you give us a rundown of your top 5 things that you think we should focus on? Specifically, we are going to have our next networking call, which I hope you can make it to. But what are some top 5 things that you think are accessible between now and April 20th that we might really focus on and come back together and just share as a networking call?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to, experiment with the things that I showed today. And it sounds like a lot of you already have started playing with ChatGPT, but I would try to make some of your own sort of personal corpus of knowledge, right? We like to call it like gardening, your memory and your context to share and infuse into the way that you use AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or what have you. But in a lot of ways, making a worldview guide, making a brand voice guide, as sort of those, inputs into a lot of your texts. We didn't talk about AI assistants here today in particular, but those are also great sort of inputs for things. Once you get to a really good point, which is very possible to get to a point where it does feel and sound like you. I'm there. It took a lot of experimentation though, right? But definitely using, I have 6 documents. I don't just have the worldview and brand voice. For every type of project I have my own sort of separate document for the rules of engagement. And guess what? All of them also have an AI anti-glossary, right? So there's no M dashes allowed ever, right? There's no, yeah, thanks for dropping mid journey. That's a great one. There's no, not this, it's that type like tropes that come up over and over again and as tells, but Project One, cultivate sort of your own, and it's really stuff you already have in many cases, right? Or throwing that into AI, making sure that, you have do not train the model on and generate something that gets it to a point where it does feel and sound like you. And then experiment. Maybe it is, yeah, um, a particular type of grant application, or gallery submission materials. Maybe it is re-envisioning your portfolio, but giving it better stuff as well, right? And the better you give it the info and context visually as well, the better results you'll get. So we don't have, a horrifically reimagined version of your site. But it takes a lot longer if we also put in a lot of those things. It will potentially take twice as long to generate, but it will be worth it.
Well, I think I'm definitely going to redo my artist statement by checking it out before our networking call, and I might even t jump on my website because it needs help, and this demo really really helped with that. So I really hope people here got something that they're gonna take over into the April community call, and I think Nicole will drop that off the link to the Eventbrite if you feel like joining us there. And then this will be kind of like a part two where we can really kind of like we've like played with it. You can kind of like put the tools in and we can work one on with each other to kind of like integrate AI into our practice, whether it's like searching for a gallery, like submissions, grant applications, whatever else you need. So, hope this was a good intro, and I want to thank Peter so much for being here. And yes, our
My
networking call is
pleasure.
April 20th. So at Monday, 5:30. So thank you, Peter, and thank you, Nicole.
You bet.
Thanks everybody for
Thank you,
joining
Robin.
us.
There
I
is a
hope.
special discount
Oh,
that
yes,
Peter
thank you.
has offered us. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this, Peter?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
can
So
see what I'm
shameless
doing.
plug, right? We've been running
Yes.
this course now for, I guess, what, 9 cohorts will be in April. We have our, yeah, final student presentations of our 6 week online Zoom-based, yeah, capstone course here for creative pros. And so people build and tinker and make some really cool stuff. In some cases, it's reimagining their portfolio site. In other cases, it's building kind of immersive film trailers that are, yeah, matching sort of real Hollywood style effects. In some cases it is, having a series of AI automations to do the drudgery and admin work, right, to, yeah, help people answer all their emails. Right, it could be anything in between or something really different, and we customize it to every participant. We typically cap our classes at 20 students. We often have about 15 or so, and they come from all different types of art, practices and professions. And it's a really, really fun community. And it was wonderful to meet you through that, Nicole, and to meet all of you guys as well. But yeah, we have a
Thank
30%
you.
discount. Email me if you're interested in learning more about it. And I hope to make the follow-up to see if you guys tinkered with any of this
I mean, it's
stuff.
so cool to have you there, especially
Yeah.
to answer more questions we might have.
It'd be
There's so
fun.
much
It'd be fun.
information.
It's so tough to, yes, to condense, into an hour, and apologize for any of the back and forth on all of this, but you guys are doing some really cool stuff, and I'd love to see what you tinker with, even, but on your own, between now and April 20th.
Thank you so much, Peter. This has been really helpful. So we can
My pleasure.
hopefully see you on the 20th. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Robin. Good to see everybody. I look forward to seeing what you do on April 20th.